Hello everyone, thanks for watching my videos. Today I'm going to not be painting, I'm going to be varnishing this piece. I can't tell if you can see in the video, but this one actually has a pretty even sheen on it, but I'm going to varnish it anyway. It protects the paint, it deepens the colors, and it gives it a nice even sheen. You know, sometimes your piece may have patches that are matte and patches that are glossy, and varnishing is a good way to protect the paint from other contaminants and just overall make it look better. I'm getting this piece ready to ship to a show in Arizona, and so I thought I'd take the opportunity to do a quick video. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I have mineral spirits here and just a small sponge. You can use a brush for this, you can use a little makeup sponges I've read people recommend. This is a sponge that I just bought at Hobby Lobby, no big deal. You can also use a paper towel. You gotta be careful with paper towels. You want to make sure that they're good quality paper towel and they're not getting little pieces of lint in the painting. I've cleaned this off with a dust vac, wiped it down basically. You want to take a little bit of mineral spirits, not a whole lot, it doesn't take that much, on the sponge, and I'm just going to distribute it onto the painting. I have this set up in a way that I think because of the glare you should be able to see the shiny part where the mineral spirits is going on. You don't want to rub very hard, you want to put it on here very lightly. This painting has been sitting for 4 months. You definitely want the painting to be dry because mineral spirits will take the paint right off, of course, because it's mineral spirits. But as long as it's been drying for appropriate amount of time, this one has, it should be fine. I just use light pressure, evenly distribute the mineral spirits. Now, you can also tell when you're doing this if you have certain patches where the mineral spirits bubbles up or beads up, like wax, like water beads up on wax, then your varnish is going to do the same thing, and you don't want that. So this is a good way also to help clean off any unwanted oils on the painting. And this one actually is doing fine. Almost all of my pieces, especially this one doesn't have white, which is probably why it's not doing it. But especially if you have a lot of white, you'll notice that it will bead up. And if you do this process at least once or 2 or 3 times, you'll notice that it will no longer bead up because the mineral spirits takes off the oil, I guess, or whatever is causing it to bead up. So you definitely want to do that before you varnish, just to make sure, if nothing else, that you're not going to have any beading up with the varnish, because it's really hard to correct that once that happens. All I'm doing here is just wiping off very lightly with a paper towel the excess mineral spirits, and this will also get off any dust that might be left over. And the mineral spirits will dry relatively quickly because it evaporates very quickly. So you can see that's all I've done. It hasn't modified the look. I'm trying to rotate it so that you can see the different glare. It's just evenly distributed. And I'm going to let this dry for a few minutes, and then I'll go ahead and put the varnish on. Okay, so this has had a chance to dry now, and I'm going to start adding my varnish. Now, you know, feel free to do your own research. That's always the best practice. But I have come to the conclusion that I like to dilute the first layer, at least the first layer of varnish, because of my experience varnishing woodwork on boats. It just allows you to get a better finish, I think. So all I'm going to do is dip my brush in the mineral spirits, and then the mineral spirit soaks up into the brush. I'm just going to wipe off the excess, and then I'm going to dip it in the varnish. That's all that's required. And then I'm going to apply this. I want to work quickly, but I don't want to work too quickly, which means absolutely nothing unless you've done it a couple times and know what too quickly means. You don't want to rub it in really hard so that it starts to bubble up. The bubbles will, in theory, come out, but it's not, you know, it's not important to work that quickly anyway. You want to get a nice smooth finish. I'm going to put a little bit more varnish on here. Mineral spirits and varnish. This starts to dry very, very quickly. This is Winsor & Newton's glossy. varnish. It's a permanent varnish. This is not the retouch varnish, or this is not Dahmer varnish. This is a permanent situation. I mean, it can be removed, but I've never done that. I think you'd have to have a professional do that. But you just be careful. It's not. It's definitely a different skill set. Now, I don't dip the brush in the mineral spirits every time because I don't want it to be thinned out completely, and mineral spirits will take some of the shine off of the varnish. But it also helps it maintain a nice flat surface. Okay, now once I've applied it, I'm going to go in and lightly brush over it again, in just the opposite direction, just to make sure there's no spots that are uneven. That's all you're doing is, I guess it's called tipping. This is another technique that's used in painting boats. I'm going to do that way. I'm going to do it one more time back in the original direction. I'm just very lightly, just with the weight of the brush is all I'm using here. I'm just going to go over the whole painting. I've got one little brush hair that's causing a problem there. Very lightly, and as this starts to dry, any ridges that are left will settle back down just through gravity. The more you brush this, if you continue to brush this as it dries and becomes tacky, it will take down the gloss finish. That's another way to control the gloss finish, or you could just not buy glossy varnish. It really depends on your taste. Okay, so the first layer has dried to the touch. It's not sticky at all. I'm going to pick up right where I left off. My brush has been soaking in mineral spirits. The reason I don't wash the brush in between is because I don't want the water to be in the brush. This way I know it's dry, and I'm going to need mineral spirits on it anyway. So I'm going to leave the brush slightly wet with mineral spirits to further dilute the varnish for this layer. I'm going to dip it in the varnish. I've moved the camera some so there's less glare, so you can see the varnish go on a little bit easy. It's going to be a little different application this time. It's not going to go on quite as smooth. It grips the varnish more than it grips the dry. I'm going to follow the same procedure. I'm going to brush this on, giving it, working quickly but not too quickly, giving it a good even coverage. This really brings out the darker colors in your painting, and they'll stay that way. You know, when you put the paint on fresh, it's a really nice deep color to it, but then as it dries, it fades, and this really makes it look fresh for years. Some people don't like the look of varnish on a painting, so obviously this is not for those people. I particularly like it, obviously. Get a little bit more mineral spirits there. Okay, now I've covered this. Now, just like before, I'm going to go back over this and lightly go back across perpendicular to the original direction, just to even out the varnish and wipe off any excess. You want to make sure there's no high spots, you know, there's no ridges or that sort of thing. I'm going to get some of this varnish off of here. I'm going to go back again. I recommend using the largest brush possible for the piece. The smaller the brush, the more likely you're going to have streaks you want to use the largest brush, or you can use a roller of some sort. I haven't tried that yet. I've thought about it. You know, there's different ways to apply the paint. Those sponge brushes, probably pretty good. I've had good luck with the bristle, just a regular bristle brush though, because even though you can see the brush strokes as you're putting it on here, as it dries, those go away. And having a slight brush strokes, you won't see them. When I say slight, I mean you won't see them, but as the light hits them, it causes it to take some of the gloss off, so that it's not, you know, glass. So this has been sitting for a while. It's completely dry to the touch again. This is this third and final layer. I put 3 layers on. It does a nice, gives it a nice effect. I've cleaned most of the mineral spirits off the brush at this point. So I want this to be mostly just pure varnish. So I'm going to do the same thing I've done each time. Start laying the varnish on here. It's a little thicker this time because of it's almost 100% varnish at this point. So it's a little bit harder to cover. So the same thing. This does take some practice. This is not my first time I varnished. I did discover when I started to varnish paintings that it wasn't as easy as just slapping on some varnish. I did make some mistakes. Getting the finish right. I would definitely recommend practicing on work that is not quite as important to you, if you have anything like that, or even just make some test canvases specifically for it, because there is a little bit to it. Learning how to get the finish smooth. Mine have gotten consistently better. You know, like most things, you have to be patient, and laying on one thick coat of varnish is not really the best way to go about it. You have to be patient, and that's why I like to do thinner coats using mineral spirits to thin out the first coats, because it allows you to start. The thinner layers are easier to get perfectly smooth. That's a skill I've learned from varnishing boats. You start with the heavy, and when you're doing teak wood, you're using a very diluted, the first several layers are very diluted, and you build, as you get towards the end, then you're using pure varnish. I'm not quite as particular with the painting varnish as I am with teak varnish, because it's not quite the same thing. Now I'm getting a little, there's extra varnish buildup on here that I don't want. I'm wiping that off. That's what I'm doing here. When you're using the varnish that's not diluted with mineral spirits, it is much gummier, I guess would be the word. So you have to be a little bit more careful about it building up ridges. So I'm just smoothing this out again, making sure there's no high points, pools of varnish. I think it should be good. I'm going to do one more in the long direction. Again, I'm just using the weight of the brush here. I'm not applying any pressure. You can see the brush is barely in my hand. just smoothing out so that it's evenly distributed. You want to check it from different angles so that you can see. You want to have it near a window or a light source where you can see so the light reflects, and that makes it easier to see if you have low spots. This one looks pretty good. So you can see now that I'm finished. This is the next day. It's dried. It's actually dried to the touch in probably an hour, but I let it sit overnight so it doesn't stick to the frame. I'm going to put it back in the frame now. You can see it's got a nice even sheen on it. And it has a different texture on the front. It's not. It's for the actual canvas is protected from fingerprints and dust and anything else. You can just wipe it off the varnish now instead of the paint. So it protects it. So I'm going to pop this in here and reframe it. And there you have it. One framed and freshly varnished painting ready to be shipped. This is a really heavy frame, so shipping is going to be expensive even though it's small. But there you have it. I hope you learned how to varnish your own paintings, and like I said, practice on something that's not too important.